The laughter echoed louder than the rain hitting the roof. Gina stood in the corner of the family restaurant, holding the tray she'd been serving. Her father's words cut through her like glass. Some kids make you proud, others just take up space. The guests laughed, glasses clinking. Even her mother chuckled. Gina forced a smile, blinking away tears. If only they knew, the space they mocked would one day be worth more than everything they owned. Gina grew up feeling invisible in her own home. Her parents always praised her elder brother, Lamy, calling him their pride and joy. They told everyone how smart and successful he was, while Gina quietly did all the work behind the scenes. Every morning, she cleaned the house, cooked meals, and cared for her sick grandmother without complaint. When her parents and Lamy went out to parties or family gatherings, Gina stayed home to make sure everything was perfect when they returned. Even though she never complained, her heart carried a small dream: to become an artist. She loved colors, brushes, and the way painting made her feel alive. Late at night, she would sketch in secret, drawing worlds where she was free and seen. But when she finally gathered the courage to tell her parents about her dream, they laughed. Her father frowned and said she was wasting her time. Her mother told her, "Painting won't feed you, Gina. Be useful for once. Help your brother with his career." Those words broke her heart, but she nodded quietly. She wanted their love, their approval, even a small, "well done." So she obeyed. She pushed her dream aside and did everything they asked. She woke up early to iron Lamy's shirts, prepared his meals, and stayed up late typing his assignments. Whenever he succeeded, her parents celebrated like it was their own victory. But when Gina tried to show them a sketch or talk about something she liked, they brushed her off or ignored her completely. Years passed like that, Gina working silently, giving everything, receiving nothing. Sometimes her grandmother, the only one who seemed to notice her pain, would hold her hand and whisper, "One day, they'll see your light." Gina wanted to believe her, but deep down, she wasn't sure. She thought love meant sacrifice. She thought maybe if she worked harder, they'd finally see her worth. But they never did. To them, she was only there to make things easier for Lamy. Her existence didn't matter. Until one cruel night, when her father made a joke that shattered what little hope she had left. That night, Gina realized something inside her. She was done waiting to be seen. That was the night the invisible daughter decided she would no longer hide. The night her heart finally broke started like any other family event. Her parents had opened a new restaurant and invited many guests to celebrate. The place was filled with laughter, the smell of food, and proud conversations about family success. But for Gina, it wasn't a celebration. While her brother Lamy stood in front of everyone in a fine suit, giving a long speech about how hard work and unity built their family, Gina was in the background, carrying trays of food. Her mother had told her earlier, "You serve better than anyone else. Don't embarrass us." So she smiled weakly and obeyed. As Lamy raised his glass and everyone clapped, her father decided to make a joke. He looked around at the guests and said, "Some kids make you proud, others just take up space." The laughter that followed was loud and cruel. It echoed through the hall, louder than the music. Gina froze in the middle of the room, holding a tray of drinks that suddenly felt too heavy. Her face turned red. Even her mother laughed, shaking her head as if agreeing. Her boyfriend, Miko, who was sitting at a table nearby, didn't defend her. He just looked down at his plate, pretending not to notice. That hurt even more than her father's words. The people she loved most made her feel like she didn't belong, like she wasn't even a person worth standing up for. The laughter died down, and everyone went back to eating. But inside Gina, something shattered quietly. She finished her work that night without a word. She smiled when spoken to. She cleared plates, wiped tables, and thanked guests politely. But her heart was gone. Every word her father said replayed in her mind. Just take up space. She wondered if that was all they ever saw when they looked at her. Not a daughter. Not an artist. Just space. When the party ended and everyone went to bed, Gina walked to her small room in the back of the house. She sat on the floor, opened her old sketchbook, and looked at her drawings, the only proof that she existed for something more. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she slowly packed her bag. A few clothes, her brushes, and her sketchbook. That was all she needed. She took one last look at her family photo on the wall and whispered, "You'll remember me someday." Then she walked out quietly into the night. The rain had started to fall, but she didn't care. For the first time, Gina didn't feel invisible. She felt free, hurt, but free. That was the night the girl they called useless finally decided to disappear. When Gina reached the city, she had no plan, no home, and very little money. The city was big, fast and cold, and no one cared who she was or where she came from. She found a tiny room behind a bakery, small enough to touch both walls if she stretched her arms. The rent was high, but it was all she could afford. Every morning, she woke up before sunrise and walked to a small restaurant where she worked as a waitress. She smiled at customers, cleaned tables, and carried heavy trays, pretending everything was fine. But when night came, Gina became someone else. With her sketchbook and a few cans of paint, she walked through the quiet streets, searching for old walls and abandoned buildings. Those walls became her canvas. She painted women with sad eyes, children holding broken dreams, and faces that carried silent pain. Her art told stories, not just hers, but of everyone who had ever been ignored, mocked, or unseen. Sometimes she worked until dawn, her hands stained with color, her heart feeling lighter with every stroke. Life was still hard. Some days, she didn't have enough money for food. Other days, rain washed away her freshly painted murals before anyone saw them. But Gina didn't stop. Painting made her feel alive. It reminded her that even if her family didn't see her worth, her art did. Her art listened. Then one morning, everything began to change. A group of university students saw one of her murals. A girl standing alone under the rain, surrounded by laughing shadows. They took pictures and posted them online with the caption, "The Hidden Voice." The photo spread quickly. People began sharing it, writing things like, "Who painted this? It feels so real. And this artist speaks without words." Gina didn't even know her work had gone viral, until she overheard a group of customers at the restaurant talking about that mysterious street painter. Her heart skipped, but she said nothing. She wanted her art to speak for her, not her name. Soon people began recognizing her style. Every new mural she painted was found, photographed, and shared. Art lovers, bloggers, and gallery owners started searching for the unknown artist behind those powerful images. The name Gina started to spread quietly in art circles. Whispered, admired, respected. They called her the street painter. The one who painted pain so beautifully that people could feel it. Gina still lived simply, still worked long hours, but for the first time in her life, she wasn't invisible anymore. Her walls were talking to the world, and the world was finally listening. She didn't know it yet, but this was just the beginning of a journey that would change everything she ever believed about herself. After years of struggle, Gina's hard work finally began to open doors. One afternoon, while she was painting a mural near the old train station, a woman approached her. She introduced herself as the owner of a well-known art gallery. The woman had been following Gina's work online and wanted to give her a solo exhibition, her very first. Gina could hardly believe it. The chance she had dreamed of for years was finally real. For weeks, she worked tirelessly, painting new pieces that showed every emotion she had ever felt: pain, hope, strength, and freedom. She felt like the invisible girl inside her was finally gone. Then, one evening, as she was arranging her sketches, she received a message from a familiar name, Miko, her ex-boyfriend. The same man who had looked away while her father humiliated her that night years ago. Gina hesitated before replying, but Miko's words seemed warm, apologetic. He said he had changed, that he admired her success, and wanted to make things right. He also told her that he now worked with her brother, Lamy, who was trying to enter the art world. At first, Gina didn't trust him, but Miko sounded sincere. He said he could help her prepare her files and contacts for the upcoming exhibition, offering to organize everything for her digital portfolio. "You deserve this moment," he said. "Let me help you shine." His tone reminded her of the boy she once loved, kind and supportive. So against her better judgment, she gave him access to her portfolio files. A few days later, while serving coffee at her part-time job, she glanced at the TV and froze. There was her brother, Lamy, standing proudly at an art event. The news headline read, "Young artist Lamy Amari stuns the city with his new urban art collection." Gina's stomach turned cold as her eyes moved across the screen. The paintings behind him were hers. Every color, every stroke, every hidden signature. Hers. She couldn't breathe. Reporters surrounded him, praising his talent. Her parents appeared on another clip, smiling and saying, "That's our son. We always knew he'd make it." Not one mention of her. Not one word of truth. Gina didn't cry that night. She didn't scream. She just sat quietly in her small apartment, staring at her paint-stained hands. Then she took a deep breath, picked up her brush, and whispered to herself, "They took my work. Now I'll give them something they can never steal." That was the moment her pain turned into power. That betrayal didn't break her. It sparked the fire that would make her unforgettable. Gina didn't go to confront her brother or her parents. She knew they would only twist the story and make her look like a liar. Instead, she went silent and poured her pain into her art. For days, she didn't eat or sleep properly. She spent all her time painting, sketching, and imagining a piece that would speak louder than any words ever could. Finally, one night, she took her paint cans and brushes and walked to a large, empty wall under an old bridge, a place where no one would stop her. There she began her masterpiece. She called it the family table. The painting showed a big dining table with faceless people sitting around it, laughing and eating. In the corner, a young girl stood holding a tray, serving them food, but her own chair was missing. Her face was turned away, as if she didn't belong there. The colors were dark and heavy, filled with emotions that could be felt even without words. Anyone who looked at it could sense the pain of being unseen. Gina painted through the night until the sky began to turn gray. When she finally stepped back and looked at her work, she felt something powerful inside her. Not revenge, but release. She didn't sign her name. She just left quietly, letting the art speak for itself. By the next morning, photos of the mural began appearing online. People who passed by stopped to take pictures, posting them with captions like, "This artist just told the story of every forgotten soul." The mural quickly went viral. Social media was flooded with posts asking, "Who painted this?" Bloggers and journalists started calling it one of the most emotional pieces of street art ever seen in the city. Everyone was moved by it, including those who once laughed at her. Even at her parents' restaurant, customers whispered about the mysterious mural. Some said it represented broken families. Others said it was about unappreciated daughters. Her father dismissed it at first, saying, "People have too much time." But deep down the image bothered him. The faceless figures looked too familiar. Meanwhile, Gina watched quietly from her small room. She scrolled through comments online, reading how people connected with her story without knowing it was hers. The world was finally seeing what she had felt her whole life, and they understood. She didn't need to shout or explain. Her art had done what her voice never could. And as the mural's fame grew, Gina knew it was only a matter of time before the truth began to surface. One stroke at a time. A month after her mural shook the city, Gina received an email that made her heart race. The prestigious Lagos Art Gala wanted to feature the hidden voice, the mysterious painter who had captured the world's attention with the family table. They didn't know her real name. They only knew her work. Gina stared at the screen for a long moment, her hands trembling. This was the kind of opportunity she had dreamed of since she was a little girl. The kind her parents once said she would never have. After all the pain, after all the silence, the world was finally calling her name. Even if they didn't know it yet, she worked harder than ever, preparing new pieces for the exhibition. Each painting told a story, one of loneliness, resilience, and rediscovered power. As she painted, she could almost hear her father's cruel words echo in her memory, but they no longer hurt her. They only pushed her to rise higher. When the night of the gala arrived, the entire city buzzed with excitement. Wealthy guests, reporters, and art collectors filled the grand hall, all waiting to meet the hidden voice. Meanwhile, her brother, Lamy, had been invited too. He believed this could be his chance to find and collaborate with the artist whose fame was overshadowing his stolen work. He arrived proudly, with their parents beside him. Her father wore a fine suit. Her mother smiled widely, telling everyone how proud she was of Lamy, pretending they still had power in the art world. They had no idea what was coming. As the lights dimmed and the spotlight turned toward the stage, the announcer said, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome tonight's featured artist, the hidden voice." The crowd held its breath as a tall, elegant woman stepped out from behind the curtain. She wore a sleek black dress, her hair tied neatly, her eyes calm and confident. Lamy froze. His mother gasped. Her father's face went pale. It was Gina, the daughter they had called useless, the sister they had ignored, the girl they laughed at. She walked to the microphone, her heels clicking softly against the stage, and smiled at the stunned audience. "Good evening," she said calmly. "Tonight's exhibition is special to me. It's dedicated to those who once told me I took up space." She paused, her eyes meeting her parents'. "I just learned how to own it." The audience erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. Everyone stood, cheering for the mysterious artist who had turned pain into beauty. Her parents couldn't move. Shame and disbelief covered their faces. Gina didn't look away. For the first time in her life, she stood tall in front of them. Not the invisible daughter, not the servant, but the woman who had turned her wounds into art. The hall filled with applause as Gina smiled and thanked everyone for coming. Reporters stood with their cameras ready, guests leaned forward in excitement, and the lights dimmed again for the grand reveal of her final painting. The curator announced, "And now, the piece that completes tonight's story," mocked at the table. A large white curtain dropped slowly, uncovering the massive canvas behind her. The room fell silent. Before them stood a powerful painting that pulled everyone in at once. It showed a family seated around a grand dining table, laughing and raising their glasses. In the background, a young woman stood holding a tray, her eyes full of quiet pain. Her chair was missing. Her father's hand was raised mid-toast, his face frozen in pride. Her mother's smile was sharp, her brother's grin wide. Every expression was drawn with such detail that no one could mistake who they were. The painting was alive with memory, a vivid recreation of the night Gina had been called a waste of space. The audience gasped softly, realizing what they were seeing. People began whispering among themselves. Some recognized the story from the mural, the family table. Others started connecting the dots, the faceless figures, the missing chair, the emotions that had spoken through every piece Gina had painted. And now the truth stood right in front of them. The girl who had been mocked was the artist the world had come to admire. Her parents stood frozen near the front of the hall. Her mother's smile faded slowly, replaced by shock. Her father gripped his seat, his face pale. Lami's hands shook slightly. His eyes darted from the painting to Gina, who stood calmly beside it, watching him with steady eyes. For years, he had stolen her work and taken her place. Now, in front of hundreds of people and cameras, the truth was painted for the whole world to see, in colors that could never be erased. The media rushed forward, taking photos and recording videos. Headlines were already being typed. Hidden voice revealed. Artist exposes family's betrayal. Reporters shouted questions. Flashes filled the room, but Gina didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Her art had spoken for her louder and clearer than anything she could ever say. Her humiliation had become her triumph. The same table where she once stood invisible was now her victory stage. The same family that mocked her was now silent, facing the reflection of their own cruelty. Gina stood there, calm and proud, her heart finally at peace. She had turned her pain into something powerful, something the world would never forget. That night, her silence became her loudest revenge, and every stroke of her brush told the story of a girl who refused to stay unseen. Within just a few days, Gina's life changed completely. Her story spread across every platform: newspapers, social media, TV shows, and art blogs. People everywhere were talking about the mysterious artist who turned her pain into power. Everyone wanted to know more about the woman behind the painting that had made the whole world stop and think. Gina's name was suddenly everywhere. Magazines wanted her on their covers, brands wanted her artwork in their campaigns, and art galleries around the world sent her invitations. The same people who once ignored her now stood in long lines just to see her art in person. She walked through the world with quiet pride, not out of arrogance, but because she finally knew her worth. The same hands that were once mocked for wasting time with colors were now signing deals worth millions. Her interviews were filled with hope and honesty. She didn't badmouth her family. She simply told her truth. "Art," she said softly during one interview, "was the only way I could speak when no one wanted to listen." That quote alone went viral, shared by thousands who saw their own pain in her words. But as Gina's star rose higher, her family's world began to fall apart. The truth about the stolen paintings came out in full detail. Reporters discovered that her brother Lami had taken credit for her early sketches, and sold them to make money. People who once admired him now called him a fraud. His friends disappeared. His art business collapsed overnight. He couldn't step out without hearing whispers. That's Gina's brother, the one who stole her work. Her parents, too, faced the weight of their actions. Their once busy restaurant, where laughter used to echo every night, now stood half empty. Customers no longer came in large numbers. Many said they couldn't eat in a place owned by people who had mocked their own daughter's dreams. The same walls that once carried family photos now seemed to carry shame. One evening, Gina's phone rang. It was Mama Amari. Her voice was shaky, broken between sobs. "Please, Gina," she said. "Come home. Your father is sick. We were wrong. We just didn't understand you." Gina listened quietly. There was a long pause. Memories of all those nights when she cried alone flashed before her eyes. The laughter, the insults, the rejection. Her heart felt heavy, but calm. She finally spoke, her voice gentle yet strong. "Mama, I wish you had seen me before the world did." She hung up, her eyes glistening, but her spirit unbroken. Because Gina had learned one of life's hardest lessons. Sometimes sorry comes too late, and love without respect is not love at all. And as the world continued to celebrate her name, she knew this was only the beginning of her true masterpiece. A life built on courage, not approval. Weeks later, Gina finally decided to visit her family, but not to stay, and not to return to the life she had left behind. She arrived in her hometown in a quiet black car, her team following with cameras and microphones. They were filming her new documentary, Voices They Tried to Silence, a project meant to give forgotten artists a platform to share their stories. Ironically, her first stop was the very restaurant where her own voice had once been ignored. When she stepped inside, the familiar smell of spices filled the air. The place looked smaller than she remembered. The walls were still the same, but the energy had changed. No laughter, no chatter, just an uncomfortable silence. Her father sat behind the counter, older and weaker than before. He looked up, his eyes wide as he saw his daughter. Not the shy girl he once dismissed, but a confident woman surrounded by people who respected her. The camera crew adjusted their lights, ready to capture the moment. But Gina wasn't there for drama. She was there for closure. She walked slowly to the center of the restaurant, her heels clicking softly against the floor. She took a deep breath and looked around the room where she had once been told her art was a waste of time. Her eyes softened, not with anger, but with understanding. Turning toward her father, she said quietly, "This place taught me what it means to be invisible. But invisibility gave me freedom." Her voice was calm, steady, and filled with truth. Everyone in the room went silent. Even the cameras seemed to pause. Her father lowered his head, tears forming in his eyes. Then Gina reached into her bag and placed an envelope on the table. It was thick, filled with money. "This is to help you rebuild," she said simply. "I know the restaurant has been struggling." Her mother gasped softly, her hands trembling as she touched the envelope. She looked at Gina with disbelief and asked, voice shaking, Why help us after all we did to you?" Gina smiled faintly. It wasn't a proud or bitter smile. It was peaceful, the kind that comes from a heart that has already healed. "Because healing isn't revenge," she said. "It's peace." Her words hung in the air like a soft echo, wrapping the room in silence. Her father finally stood up, wanting to say something, but no words came out. Gina looked at them one last time, her eyes kind but distant, and then turned to leave. The camera followed her as she stepped outside, sunlight catching her face. That moment went viral later. Not because of fame, but because of grace. People saw not a victim, but a woman who turned her pain into purpose. And as Gina walked away from the restaurant, she didn't just leave her past behind. She walked fully into her peace. Months later, Gina stood in front of a grand audience at an international art conference in Paris. The stage lights reflected softly on her face, and behind her, a giant screen displayed her most famous mural, The Family Table. The same painting that once told her story of rejection, now hung in galleries across the world. The room was filled with artists, critics, and journalists waiting to hear from the mysterious woman whose art had changed conversations about pain, family, and resilience. As she walked up to the podium, there was a calm confidence in her steps. She wasn't nervous anymore. The girl who once painted on broken walls under a bridge had now become a global voice for those who had none. She looked at the audience. Hundreds of faces from different countries, all waiting. Taking a deep breath, she began to speak. "They called me useless," she said, her voice steady. "But sometimes what they call useless is just waiting to be seen." The hall fell completely silent. She looked up at the massive screen showing her mural. The faceless family, the missing chair, and the quiet strength in the colors. "So if you've ever been mocked for dreaming," she continued, "don't shrink to fit their comfort. Take up all the space you need." For a moment no one moved. Then slowly, the audience rose to their feet. The sound of applause filled the room, echoing through every corner of the hall. Cameras flashed, people cheered, and some even wiped tears. In that moment, Gina wasn't just an artist, she was a symbol of hope. Her story was more than a story about art. It was about courage, faith, and finding your worth when no one else sees it. After her speech, news channels across the world replayed her words. Her quotes trended online. #TakeUpSpace became a global hashtag. Young people, especially women, shared their own stories under her post. Stories of being overlooked, doubted, or laughed at, but still choosing to rise. Gina's message reached schools, communities, and even government programs promoting creativity. She had become a voice for the invisible dreamers. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, in her hometown, her parents sat in their living room watching her on television. The restaurant was quiet, the lights dim. Her mother's hands shook as she turned up the volume. Her father sat silently, his eyes fixed on the screen. When Gina's speech ended, he whispered, barely audible, "That's our daughter." Tears rolled down their faces, not from pride alone, but from regret, the kind that comes when you realize too late what you once had. The girl they had mocked for taking up space had become a masterpiece the world celebrated. And somewhere inside them, they finally understood. It wasn't just her art that changed, it was her courage to never stop creating, even when no one believed in her.